If you're like me, you spend lots of time poring over maps, looking at weather data, all in an effort to help predict when and where my best times to hunt will be. It'd be nice if there was a reliable source with all this information in one place. Enter the Spartan Forge app. Unlike some other predictive apps on the market, Spartan Forge was created from military combat intelligence experience tailored for hunters, and stands at the nexus of machine learning and white-tailed deer hunting. No more man-made algorithms. This is a predictive model based on real GPS collared deer data, historical and predictive weather, and the next level of mapping imagery, all at my fingertips. I've been using the iOS app this season, and it has replaced all my other mapping tools. Visit SpartanForge.ai and sign up today, or head to your iOS or Android app store. Use the promo code TRUTH to save some money and download it today. Mobile hunters, if you're interested in upping your mobile game, then head to tetherednation.com and check out their saddle gear. There are a few things you can actually buy that will help you become a better deer hunter or give you the freedom to hunt any tree or any situation. This is the reason why I started saddle hunting in the first place and why I use Tethered's gear. I can honestly say that Tethered's saddle gear has changed how I hunt for the better. Big tree, little tree, from the ground, it doesn't matter. I'm untethered by my gear to hunt the best setup for the situation, instead of hunting for a tree that my gear can use. My current core setup consists of the Phantom saddle, tethered one sticks, and the Predator platform, along with an assortment of their accessories. So if you want to up your mobile game, head over to tetherednation.com. Welcome to the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Spartan Forge. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 309. Today, we are traveling across the globe hunting with my good buddy, Johnny Utah Mulligan. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you are feeling fine as you're listening to this. I am in the throes of a Kansas hunt, and I'm actually recording this up front well in advance to make sure that I had a podcast for this week, because I just wasn't sure with my schedule in the evenings, getting home late. You know, these travel hunts can be a bit of a grind. So a lot of times when I get home in the evening, I don't feel much like doing any work of any type other than just getting some food in my body and passing out. So hopefully the hunt's going well. Hopefully everyone's November is off to a killer start. Hopefully there's tags getting filled. I look forward to checking in on social media, kind of seeing what's going on with all you guys and gals. But truth be told, I usually take this time just to do a nice recharge. Try to stay off of social as much as possible, other than just to kind of check in with some buddies and stuff like that. And use this time not just to hunt, but also just to kind of have a digital reset where I just kind of get rid of all the electronics for a week and just focus on being outside and chasing whitetails. And I'll have a full recap for you guys when I get back. We'll do a recap show at some point here. But with that, we're going to go ahead and just jump into today's show. Have my good buddy Johnny Utah Mulligan on. You guys know him, you love him. He's a multi-time defender on this show. So John, this past year, and I think the last time whenever he and I did a podcast together, he had mentioned it about possibly going to South Africa, or maybe when we did the last one, he had already had it scheduled. But he ended up going to South Africa. I think it was in August, if I'm not mistaken. I forget the exact dates. But it was one of those things. It was interesting because John and I, whether we talked about it on the podcast or offline, we both were kind of always hesitant about it. We had heard, or had not heard, but had some, preconceived notions of what hunting South Africa might be like. And John shared those same kind of preconceived notions, but was like, like John usually is, he's up for, anything really. It's like, hey, if I've not tried it before, let's give it a whirl and see how it works. Don't knock it till you try it type of approach, which is one of the things I like most about him, is he's always down to get involved and just kind of try something out and then have an opinion about whether or not it's for him or not for him, or whatever the case is. And so we talk a little bit about his South Africa hunt, the animals that he saw, what he was able to, not burying the lead here, don't want to give too much away, but he did fill multiple tags on that trip, and he came away with a different kind of perception or perspective of what it is like to hunt South Africa. And I think that's important for whitetail hunters or just normal people to go do this type of hunt to bring back an honest kind of representation of what it is to kind of remove maybe some of the stigma or maybe some of the poor feelings that some may have toward hunting South Africa or hunting just different continents in general. And so he did that. And then in true John fashion, he's just been kind of on the move all fall. He had an awesome Colorado mule deer hunt. We talk about that. Some funny stuff happened in there. He's been in Wyoming hunting mule deer as well. He was in Kansas, and then he's now back in Iowa focusing on whitetails. I think he's going to head back to Kansas. We might actually be in Kansas around the same time, just depending, and not too far apart from one another. And then he still yet has his, I think, Canada hunt coming up again this winter, if I'm not mistaken. So super awesome episode with John as usual. Going to go ahead and just jump straight into things today. As always, want to thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. Take number 2. Johnny Utah and I taking number 2 with a little technological difficulty. What's going on, brother?
Hey, what's up, man? We haven't done this in a while, and maybe, I don't know, man. I just hadn't restarted my computer in a while, so I did a little restart, reset the modem. We should be good.
Yeah, I always have to remember to do that, man. It's like all of a sudden my computer start acting jacked up, and I'll be like, when is the last time I actually restart this thing? Like, and I'll have to, and it'll be like months because I never restart.
Yeah. No, that's the first time I've done it in 6 months.
Yeah, that's not a bad run then,
Yeah,
we did all right. Some relationships don't last that long, so we had a good run.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
nice.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, exactly. Man, we haven't had a chance to talk in a while because you've just been kind of jet setting all over the place, dude. Like you are. I know. Well, we talked. What was that? Like early spring, maybe, or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it had to have been spring or late spring, something like that. But we haven't talked at all since like late summer and fall.
Yeah, because you've just been a man on a mission between photo work and hunting and just like flights here, flights there. It's like I just try to keep up with you on Instagram, like trying to figure out where Utah is at. I know when you're driving because we still call when we drive, so I know that's happening. But dude, you've been so far. You've been, and we're gonna cover these, but you've been Colorado, South Africa, Kansas, Wyoming, and now you're back in Iowa.
Yeah, back in Iowa now, and then there was also a Texas trip in there too.
Okay, what was the Texas trip?
I went. Well, the idea was to go down there and just shoot a bunch of pigs, but really bad droughts and things were pretty slow, so it turned into a jackrabbit hunt real quick.
Nice. How was that?
There's a bunch of dead jackrabbits.
Nice. What did you guys run dogs or anything, or was it just how did?
Nope.
No.
Well, we did. We ran UTVs and lights on our ARs.
Nice.
And it wasn't so well for the jackrabbits.
Right. Did it remind you of your days of door kicking? Like,
yeah, pretty much. There was a lot of that. Yeah. There was a lot of go on your right. Yeah. It was fun, man. It was a good time.
That's awesome, dude. I've never hunted jackrabbits in general. I will say that I saw the biggest effing rabbit that I've ever seen whenever I was in Idaho. And it scared the living crap out of me because I walked behind my tent to take a piss. And when I walked back there, I didn't have my light on. So I just flipped my headlamp on real quick. Because I knew there was like a small stump that wasn't far behind our tent. So I'm walking back there and I'm like, oh man, I should probably just flip my light on so I don't trip over this freaking thing and like eat it. So I flipped my light on and there's this rabbit that's sitting there that like hops, like 2 hops as soon as I got close to it when I flipped my light on.
Yeah.
And that thing was like, it was like as big as like a small dog. Like it was huge. Yeah. I was like, holy shit. I was like, look at the size of this rabbit. And I think it was a snowshoe. Because that time of year they're brown and then they turn white. But then I told this story previously. The effer stole my sock. Like took my sock from my off my boots.
It's a damn thief.
A thieving rabbit, dude. Yeah. So
Rabbit.
I had like a pair of like really nice like Kennetrek hiker socks, and I had them laying on my boots outside my tent to dry like overnight because they're just sweaty or whatever.
Sure.
And I laid them there with my boots, got in my tent. I came out the next morning. There's now one sock. Like, so there's going to be a rabbit in Idaho that's got like the pimp den.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like,
man, let's hope it was a rabbit and not something else, you know?
Oh, we did have a creeper roll in like the first night that we were there. That was a little unnerving. I heard it coming through the brush, like behind our tents. And so there was me, our camera guy, and then Wilson was on the other side of him. And there was like a space like in between their two tents. And mine, I kind of purposefully tucked in between two trees close to like Kobe's tent.
Yep.
That way nothing could kind of get in between us, you know? And so I heard it coming, and I was just so tired that night. I was just like, whatever, I'm going to sleep. I don't want to know if it's going to eat me. If it's going to eat me, I just want it to happen. I don't want to know
if I die, I die. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to know it's going to happen, you know?
Yeah.
And Wilson said that he was laying there and like he saw it pass by his tent and kind of come back. So he had his gun laying there and wasn't sure what it was. It's like, did you get a good look? He's like, I didn't want to know what it was.
Yeah. That's funny, dude.
Yeah.
Bears are legit.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll talk about that here in a second. 'Cause I think you were in bear territory when you were in Wyoming.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Which was legit, but we'll start at the top. So,
yep.
I want to talk about your Colorado hunt, man. 'Cause I know muleys has been on your list of things.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, going into the Colorado hunt, I had never pursued mule deer, period. And I mean, you see them when you're shed hunting out west, and I see them when I'm antelope hunting, you know, in Montana, but I've never had a tag for them. So going into the hunt, my only base knowledge or training, so to speak, experience was, you know, from pronghorn hunting, and it is very similar. The terrain's a little different, and you know, pronghorns will bed up in the middle of an open field, sage flat or something, or you know, or some alfalfa somewhere. But you know, I knew that the muleys were going to bed up on hillsides and some scrub oak, and they were going to be in the shade. And you know, buddy of mine, you know, Jason Matzinger, I talked to him before I went, and I said, "You got any tips for me before I go?" And he said, "Glass every piece of shade you possibly can, and expect them to be in a place where you're like, there is no way no living creature would be bedded up in. Oh, holy shit. Look at the ears on that thing. You know what I mean?" So that was what I had. But so I went out there with a buddy of mine, and I've met a lot of weirdos on social media, but
my name's Clint Campbell.
I've met some weirdos, but I met a good dude out in Colorado. He actually lives in Texas, and my buddy Brennan. And of course, with the name Brennan, it was nonstop stepbrother jokes.
Oh man, yeah.
Like, where's your brother Dale, Brennan? Right. But so, anyways, that was pretty funny. But I meet this cat, and we started talking about bows, and that was kind of how we started chit chatting and whatnot. And then he kind of makes a comment like, "Hey, you ought to come out and hunt with me." And I'm like, "Yes, you can like steal my kidney or something, or a liver, you know, like." Right. So we end up making this hunt happen, and I got a tag, went out there to hunt with him, and you know, the first day he kind of showed me his style, you know, the way that he does it, and it was a lot of glass, a lot of driving, covering some area, whether it be in a side by side or in a truck, and you know whatnot. And on day we had a bunch of rain and mist, and we kind of lost a day of hunting. But on day 3, we decided, okay, I kind of know the game plan. I kind of know the strategy. And he said, all right, I tell you what, you're in your truck. I'm going to get in a side-by-side, and you check this basin. I'll check that basin. And they're two drainages that ran parallel, basically.
Right.
And we can kind of divide and conquer. If we glass up something that looks stalkable, we'll link back up in about 45 minutes at the bottom of these two drainages, because at the very bottom was a road, and we'll meet up down at the road, and then, hey, what'd you find? What'd you find? And we'll go for whatever is a higher probability stalk. So it's like, ready, team, break, and we separate. Me and my camera guy split off, and then he goes his way. 10 minutes after separating, we drop into this drainage, and I'm like, oh my God, there's two stud muleys right there. They're only 150 yards away, and they're about to bed up behind this scrub oak. So the problem for us is we were in a truck on this 2-track, and there's about 20 yards. I guess, put it this way, the easiest way to explain it, we need to get 20 yards away from the truck to be below them, and then they can't see us anymore. And I'm like, but how are we going to get out of the truck, opening doors and all that kind of crap? So we wait for them to go in behind this scrub oak, and I'm just like, go. And in a hurry of getting out of the truck, I don't even shut the truck off. The truck's still running.
That's awesome.
We bail out. We get down to the very bottom. It's like, okay, now we're about 110 yards away from these muleys, and they didn't see us. So then we just start, knee crawling, belly crawling, side, knee walking, monster crawling, whatever we got to do. And the wind's in my back. And as we go up in elevation, the wind keeps shifting a little more to them. So I'm using the Johnny Utah mullet, and that's my windicator. That's how I know from my hair. If I feel the hair coming over top of my ears on my right side, I'm like, ooh, wind shifting. Ooh. Okay, we're good. But then if I start to feel it on my left ear, I'm like, oh, we gotta. So we're just kind of working up and then working sideways, working up, working sideways, just keeping that wind in our advantage. And before I know it, I close in. I'm at 42 yards, and there's this big rock outcropping next to the sage, or to the scrub oak, and I can range that. And I know that I'm within a yard or two of them at that rock. So I'm like, okay, now I've seen this done on hunting videos before, and the internet celebrities, they always say that they had to wait out the mule deer for 7 hours before he stood up from his bed. And I'm like, I can tell you right now, I will be bored to death, in 7 hours.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, but I'll give it a couple hours.
Right.
I'll, like 7 minutes later, I'm like, screw this. This sucks. You know what I mean? Like, I'm bored to death. So what I do is I start to shift myself to the point where I know that the edge of my scent cone is actually going to hit the deer right in the face. So I start working my way 2 foot, another 2 foot, but I'm keeping that same distance. So I've already got my sight dialed to 42 yards, and I'm already on my D loop as well. So I'm trying to get everything out of the way that as soon as one of those muleys stands up, I can just come to full draw. And that's all I got. It's the only thing I have to do. So then I was like, I don't think this is going to work. They're not standing up. Okay, screw it. I just came to full draw, and I'm like, I'm just going to hold it, and I'm going to stand up, and that'll force them up. So the first one, it works, but he just stands and runs all in one motion. I'm like, shit, that didn't work out so well. So then the second one is kind of like, he was not at the edge of the scent cone. So the one that was to the left caught the wind or scent or movement, and he, skedaddled. The one that's on the right, it's just, he kind of stands up and he's looking around like, well, shit, where'd my buddy go? And he takes one step up, and I'm like, oh, there he is. I got vitals. And then he takes one last hop, and I'm still at full draw. So I'm trying to gauge the hop. I'm like, and you know how it is out west. What looks like 2 yards is really 10, And so he takes one little hop, and I'm like, auto calculation in my brain at full draw, I think maybe he's at 45 yards. I'm going to hold just a smidge higher than I would. Well, that 2 or 3, what I thought was 2 or 3 yards turned out to be like 7 or 8 yards. And that's that depth perception problem out west when the the clouds is the backdrop, right?
Yeah.
So I shoot and I end up hitting him low, and it actually just completely unzipped, hit the bottom side of this muley, and everything just starts falling out. I mean,
That's
guts,
crazy.
liver, stomach, it just the iron will just it was right across and it unzipped him. I had an entrance and an exit, but at the bottom of that belly, what I ended up having was like a 6-inch cut and then another 6-inch cut of opening. And everything's just dumping out. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I knock another arrow. I scramble up to the top of this ridge where I see him trot off, but then he goes to a walk. I get to like 60 yards. I range 60, dial to 60. I come to full draw. He takes off running. And I'm like, okay, let's see what happens here. He runs about 100 yards and I see him bed up. So the first thought is he's going to die. And if I don't bump him, he'll probably die right there. But I know there's a lot of coyotes in the area. And I also know he's suffering. So I'm like, let's see if we can pursue quietly. And maybe I can go ahead and get a second shot quick and put this to rest. So we're still, we're slow stalking. I've got an arrow knocked. I'm already, on my D loop and I'm just waiting to draw and I'm just scanning, take a couple of steps, scan. I know about where he is, but he's in this scrub oak. And I'm looking back at my camera guy, Cody, and I'm like, hey, if you see him, say something. You know what I mean? It's kind of like at the airport. If you see something, say something.
Right.
So he's like, I got nothing. And then all of a sudden we see him stand up. He's 20 friggin' yards away. I'm like, crap. But he stands up and he bounds off. And again, more and more stuff from his stomach is falling out. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, we have to keep pushing him. You know what I mean? We have to keep pushing him. Like I said, I don't know how long it's going to take for him to die, but there are some times that I will always err on the side of push and get another arrow in him. I hate the whole let him lay overnight. And I understand there are times you have to do that, but this was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So daylight was not our enemy in this situation. Coyotes are. So I'm like, I got to keep pushing. So he runs about 100 yards and then we lose him. I'm like, okay, let's wait about 5 minutes. Let him get good and comfortable in a bed and we'll go again. Same thing happens, except this time it's 26 yards. So I look at Cody and I said, all right, this is what we're going to do from this point forward. We are just going on blood and we are going to follow blood. And that's what we did. So for the next 40 minutes or so, we just tracked blood. Next thing I know, I'm like caught off guard because he's bedded right in front of me at 15 yards. And he's not getting up. He just turns and slowly looks back at me like it's almost like he looked at me saying, bro, just finish me. Put it,
Right.
let's get this over with. Put another arrow in him, and then that was it. He bound off 40 yards, and crashed in some scrub oak. And again, we were supposed to meet up with my buddy Brennan, and there's no phone service. There's no cell service. So
Meanwhile,
he's like at the
meanwhile your truck's still running.
truck is still running. Yes, good. I'm glad you picked up on that. So we get down to the bottom of the hill, and I look on, like on X, and I'm like, okay, my truck is 2 miles away at 9,700 foot elevation on the top of this mountain, and we're at the bottom at like 7,000 foot, And I was like, dude, what the hell? So we get down to the bottom of the road. It's completely dark at this point. And I'm thinking, surely my buddy Brennan's like, okay, it's dark. I got to go find these cats. Like, what if there was something happened to them? And I'm thinking he's going to be driving up and down this gravel road, and he never does. So I just start hoofing it back to his house because I know they have four-wheelers at their house, and maybe I can hotwire one or find one that keys in it or gas. So I walk about a mile and a half back to his house, get a four-wheeler, drive back to Cody, and I'm like, hey, Cody, I was like, keep the coyotes off the mule deer. You got to stand protector over this dead muley. And so, anyways, we make it back to the house, and I was like, Brendan, you never came and looked for us. And he's like, ah, shit, you're fine. You know what I mean? I'm like, no. I was like, we had a headlamp, So he's like, what do you want to do? You're like, you want to celebrate with a beer, or you want some bourbon, or we got to celebrate. And I was like, well, first we have to go back to my truck and turn the truck off, or at least get it off the mountain. So we went up to go get my truck, and we drove it down, and then we celebrated. But
nice. That's
yeah,
awesome,
it was
man.
cool,
Dude.
man.
That's a hell of a freaking hunt, man. Like the whole, like the guts falling out, like tracking, like, dude. As soon as you said the truck was still on, I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a while.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Truck was still running.
Yes,
yep.
that trip cost you like an extra $100 just in tank.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You just sat up there running, man, with the AC on.
Right.
I got up there, everything was all fogged up. But yeah, I mean, it was like I said, when it's go time, it's go time, and I didn't think about anything else.
That's right.
So got that done, and we got him hung up, and then the next morning, it was pretty chilly, and so anyways, we got him hung up, caped out, meat stripped off, packed in ice, and then started the trek back to Iowa, because I was leaving for South Africa in a few days.
Yeah,
so got everything taken care of at the taxidermist at Old Barn, and
nice. Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Like so I've only ever had, so when I was in Montana, that was a combination mule deer and elk hunt, and I was at full draw on 2 different mule deer, and they're just super. I mean, there's, if you've never hunted them before, for someone who's never hunted them before, it's like it's kind of crazy how big they are. I mean, they're kind of like a whitetail, but just like the body size is like the difference is insane. Like just like the size, not just the antlers, but like the body itself. Like they're just a big animal.
Yeah.
Just in general.
Yeah.
I actually saw some mule deer last year when I was in Kansas too, which was kind of cool. Like mixed in with whitetails. Like I was glassing this CRP field, and there was like some deer, and I was watching these couple bucks, and then I was far enough away to where with my binos, I could tell that they were bucks, but I couldn't really make out exactly what they were. Just because I was using binos at that point. I didn't have a spotter for that particular hunt. And all of a sudden something spooked, and one starts hopping. I'm like, oh shit, there's a mule deer. Like, I thought they were all whitetails kind of hanging out together. And then, the only way I could tell was like when they started running, the one was hopping, the rest of them were kind of, running like whitetails. But so you get back home, your next trip is South Africa, which I know that's something that there's an animal in particular that you've wanted to hunt for forever. For very specific reasons. And so you had the chance now, and we've talked about this, and I talked to you after you got back from South Africa. We had a quick chat on the phone, but how was, so just in general, what was your kind of impression of South Africa?
Well, I was one of those people that when I looked at South Africa, I'm like, it's high fence hunting, and it's for fat rich dudes.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of the way Africa was pitched to me, and a lot of that was probably driven from the fact that I was like, I'll never be able to afford that. So instead of calling myself poor, I'll just say, I'll just find everything wrong with South Africa and hang my hat on that.
Right.
As I got older, and as I've gotten more into hunting and had opportunities to have in-depth, educated conversations with people that know more about Africa than me, I started asking the right questions. And what I found out was that it is their economy. And, if anybody hasn't watched the episode, I encourage you to watch the episode, because at the intro, there's a segment where I'm talking to one of the PHs, what we call guides, they call professional hunters, where he goes in depth and talks about why they even have fences. And to further go into that, it was during even as early as the 1600s that game became monetized. Hey, there's a value to these things out here. And it almost obliterated between war, fire, and overhunting, it almost eradicated all the animals in South Africa. Then their government started adopting some policies that not weren't exactly for conservation efforts, but it worked out that way. They said, "Hey, we want you guys to put up some friggin' fences because we got too many animals crossing the road and people are hitting them and crap all the time. It's causing wrecks. So here's the deal: you pay for the fence, you put it up, you get to keep whatever's inside your stock." And so now think about if you have a resource that once it's gone, you're going to protect it. So the easiest way to do it with an animal that breeds is to make sure that they keep breeding and you don't overhunt it. You know, it's no different if I've got X amount of food to last me a year. Well, I'm not going to overeat. I'm going to ration it out to last. So it's a totally different conservation model than what we have in the States, but it works very well for them, you know? So that was neat to see firsthand. But, it's a 15-hour flight over there from Atlanta to Johannesburg. The majority of those flights are at night. So what I did is I kind of stayed up really, really late for a couple of nights, beforehand. So I'd be extra tired. Man, I watched some movies and I was out. I mean, I slept like 9.5, 10 hours of the flight. I watched 2 movies and boom, we're there. Johannesburg was a lot nicer than I thought. I guess I had this perception that it was going to be like poor and like ratty or something, but it's actually a really nice airport. And the outfitter that I went with is a company called Rhino Land Safaris. And if anybody has any interest in going to South Africa, to me, the hardest thing is there's no Yelp, right? So you almost have to know somebody that went there to get a good, legitimate review. So I'm giving a very positive review of these guys at Rhino Land Safaris. And if you mention Johnny Utah or you mention Primal Divide, they will do a 5% discount, and 5% adds up real quick.
Yeah.
On a hunt like that where you might spend 5 or 6 grand,
Right.
So, going into it, they had sent some paperwork and they wanted to know if I had any allergies or what meals I preferred. And then, what style of hunting I was wanting to do and kind of what I wanted to get out of this experience. And I told them a list of animals that I wanted to chase. Number 1 was an impala. That's more of a sentimental animal. My number 1 big game was a kudu. And then at that point, I'm like, hey, whatever catches my eye, whatever,
Right.
whatever an animal,
Yeah.
And sort of, in their voice, oh, okay, Uncle Johnny, we will make sure you have an opportunity at those animals. So, anyways, I get there, we get checked in that night, and the place that I hunted was about 3 hours away from Johannesburg, and so take a little ride over in one of their Toyota Hilux, which we don't have here in the States, but it's a right-hand drive Tacoma on steroids. That's diesel. So they're badass. I don't know why we don't have them in the States. If we did, everybody would have one.
That's kind of crazy. So it's a diesel. It's not a gasser.
No, it's a diesel. They're
Wow.
so badass. I mean, it's basically a Tacoma with an extra sport package put on it.
That's pretty dope.
And they're all tricked out with racks and winches, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. You can pull an elephant with it if you want to.
Oh yeah. And then when we get there, they have all like the models, like the 70 series Land Cruisers, and I will own one of those at some point. But they are so freaking awesome. But so we get there and we get checked in and we head out the first morning. And because I was doing bow, we did do a lot of blind hunting. And this concession, Rhino Land, is the second largest concession in South Africa. And it's like 50 square miles.
Wow.
Like, think about that.
That's crazy.
I mean, so right out of the gate, everything that I had been told about South Africa is going out the window. They actually have a natural river that runs through, their property. And there are a lot of South African outfitters that are small, 10 acres, maybe 20 acres, and they don't have water. So they have to do water holes And unfortunately, what they have to or will do sometimes is maybe decrease the water a little bit. And right before the hunter comes in, turn the water on. That's one way to guarantee the animals come to the water hole, you know?
Right, right.
So there was none of that going on at Rhino Land with having a natural river that went through there. But so we head out, and I mean, dude, there's leopards, there's cheetahs tracks that I'm seeing, and the first couple of days we didn't have the best weather, and I would see like again, I've never seen these animals before except in pictures, right? And so I'd see an impala, and I'm like, ooh, there's a good one. And my PH is like, no, 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 no. We can do a lot better than that. That's kind of a young one. We don't want to kill the young ones. You know, we want to take the mature rams. I'm like, bro, I'm telling you right now, I'd be happy with that thing. And he's like, oh no, 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 no. We're gonna hold out. So like 3 days had gone by and I hadn't killed anything. And I'm like, damn, like, come on. I'm itching. I'm jonesing, you know what I mean? Like to shoot something. And so anyways, we have a baboon that comes in and he's like, shoot that friggin' baboon. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to shoot a monkey, man. You know what I mean? Like it's just a baboon. It's like it's a hairy version of me. And he's like,
or you might that. Or you might be a hairless version of it.
Exactly. Very true. Very true. And he's like, dude, shoot that friggin' baboon. And I'm like, oh, all right. So I, knock an arrow and come to full draw and I shoot this baboon. And he dies the way the old cowboys died in the old Westerns back in the day. Like super dramatic. And I'm like, oh, good Lord. I'm like, I'm feeling kind of bad about shooting this baboon. So we get back to camp and the owner of the operation's like, hey, man, he's like, I heard you shot a baboon. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, what, do you feel bad about it? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Shooting a monkey is kind of weird. He's like, let me show you a video of what baboons do. So he pulls out his phone and shows me this video of these baboons running down these impala fawns. And the youngest one is slow, can't keep up. It snatches it up by a leg and just shucks it like an ear of corn and just starts eating its guts.
Yep.
It
was crazy whenever you and
I
were
talking
about it.
It's the most violent thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, whenever you and I talked about it when you got back home, because you said that and you kind of were like, I forget what you said to me. You said something to the effect of like, you probably feel some sort of way about that. You know what I mean? And I'm
exactly.
And I was like, I'm like, yeah. And you were like, yeah, me too. He was like, you said, until I saw, and I was like, oh, and then it made sense to me. I was like, that's their coyote. Like that's
it is, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what he said. He goes, I think you guys, it would be a coyote, for you guys. And I watched the video and I'm like, yeah, dude, screw that baboon.
Right.
Like I'll shoot every one of those that I see now. He's like, we go out every year and we try to kill as many as we can. But it doesn't even put a dent in them. He's like, that is what eats our young animals, eggs, fawns. I mean, they're just savages, and they're mischievous. They break stuff. They had some telephone lines that they climbed up and ripped telephone lines off poles. And he's like, they're just a bunch of assholes, like they're horrible. So anyway, so we've got we've got a kill down, and then after that things just started clicking. The next day I shot a warthog, and ironically the warthog that I shot, a poacher had shot through the fence and injured the back leg of this warthog. And it was just, it was in a bad way. So that was kind of a mercy killing. I went ahead and shot it and put it down. Because if you don't, then that's just going to allow cheetahs and leopards are going to start coming into the area to come get it. And then once they get there, they're not just stopping there. They're going to munch on some other things. So shot that. And then I shot a jackal, which is like kind of like a coyote / fox, and in size, it was kind of closer to a fox, in size, but it kind of looked like a coyote,
That's weird. I always, for some reason, I always thought jackals were bigger, and I don't know why.
Yeah, no, it was kind of small, like a
Interesting.
really small coyote, you know?
It always makes me
Um,
think of the band Jackal too, in the song "The Rock Me, Roll Me, Jackal Me Off." Like
yeah.
I can't help.
Well, it's probably, I think, cartoons because jackals are bad guys.
Right,
They
right.
make them more fierce, you know,
Hmm.
in movies or depictions or whatever. But so I shot that, and I'm like, man, like I still want to get to this impala. Finally, I have an opportunity that I shoot an impala, and the first impala that I shot would have been the equivalent of, like, in Iowa, a 5 or 6 year old whitetail that was 110 inches,
Mm,
fully mature, spreading bad genetics.
right.
And the rams, the ram impalas are kind of like pronghorn and elk. You know, they have a harem. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's his women, and so he's the only one that gets to breed them. So you kind of start to see the importance of why they want to get rid of him. You know,
Right.
get him out of there for breeding season. So I shot him. And then the next day, I have an opportunity at a really, really, really nice impala. Now, what's funny is an okay Iowa whitetails like a 140, a giant Iowa whitetails a 180,
Hmm.
40 inches of difference.
Right.
An impala, an okay impala to an awesome impala, we're talking 2 inches
Oh, really?
is the difference. You know what I mean? Maybe
Right.
3 inches.
Right. Right.
It's crazy.
That's funny.
So I'm looking at it and he's like, okay. He's like, now this is a trophy. And I was like, what? It looks the same as the last one that I killed. And he goes, oh no, this one's a trophy. And then once I got them side by side, then I could see what he was talking about. And it's just like kind of the way they sweep in and then it kind of flares out. And
Right.
so, sidebar, the reason why an Impala is such a big thing for me is before my dad passed away, that was the one thing that my dad and I did together is we restored a 1963 Impala Super Sport, and it's tattooed across my back. It was one of the first tattoos I ever got, and so that has always been like an animal that I said, man, if I go there, that's an animal that I want to shoot. So that's the reason why Impala was so high. So now
That's
I'm
awesome,
down
man.
to
Like
the
I knew a little bit of that backstory. So
mm,
whenever you got the Impala, like I was super stoked that came to fruition for sure.
yeah, yeah, super super cool. And then of course I have to strip my shirt off and show the guys in Africa
Of
why.
course, yeah.
Well, they were like, man, this guy really wants to shoot an Impala, and an Impala is really not what most people come here for, you know what I mean? But
Right.
yeah, so that was super cool. And then I'm like, they said, okay, we're down to the kudu, and I said, all right, let's get it done. And it's the second to the last day, and we go to this big natural pond on the property, and we had sat there for 2 days straight, bell to bell, and it's like 95 degrees, and we're in a
Dude, you were
blind.
telling me about the blind and just like the heat. I'm like, oh my god, dude, I think I would have fell out just like
Oh,
from like the like intensity of the heat, just straight exhaustion, like heat stroke
yeah,
style.
yeah, a gallon of water, and I'm like literally took one leak, all day.
And
And
that was like
I'm just
orange.
like this. Yeah, oh yeah, it was like brown,
Yeah.
coffee. I'm like, oh, this is horrible. Um, it's getting close to last light. We have one that comes in, and he's a good Impala, not a stud, but a very respectable. I'm sorry, kudu, a
Mhm.
very respectable kudu. He comes in kind of blindside, quiet, and there was another one that was in front of us, a juvenile. So if we're all kind of locked in on this juvenile. None of us really pay that much attention to the one that sneaks in, and he sneaks in like at 7 yards. It's no different than a whitetail, and my camera buddy Drew reaches up and he's making some shutter speed adjustments, and I'm like, no, 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 like now's not the time to even be touching the camera because the kudu is looking right at us. And in the episode, you can see the color change on the screen, and then he just bolts. And it's like, oh my God, the camera saved another animal. So the next morning, camera guy Drew, he had to leave. He had his day job. He had to go to Germany.
Oh,
So he
jeez.
flies out. Yeah. So he's gone. And I'm thinking, oh, well, man, so close. I've got one basically day, like a half a day left. And then it's time to start getting all the paperwork done and get ready to leave. So myself and the PH go out together. And I said, all right, man, bring your rifle with us. I've got my bow. And if we have a situation where there's a really good kudu and it's outside of bow range, I'm going to pick up the rifle and I'll do it. So I'm driving around. We're cruising, we're stalking, we're walking. We get back in, we drive some more. And he ends up spotting one at 239 yards away. And I was like, well, I can't do that with the bow. So I'm like, give me the rifle. So he had a 338 rim mag suppressed, and he threw that over to me, and I was like, man, I don't know. And I looked at it, and it had a loophole scope on it, and I was like, well, now I just got the good juju, you know what I mean?
Right.
Since I work with old, and I was like, what's the chances that it had a loophole scope? So I was like, all right, screw it, let's do it, man. But ended up shooting him, made a phenomenal shot on that. It's probably one of the best shots I've ever made on an animal with a rifle, but uphill, basically free-handed on the side of the truck. And he was hard quartered to me, and I put it on the inside of the shoulder.
Nice.
And just obliterated, just a great heart shot. He ran 20 yards, and that was it. He was done, piled up, and the guide, I know the guide was pretty pumped up, and on the episode, you can hear his reaction in the background, and he's like, "Good job, Johnny. Excellent job, Johnny. You whacked him, bud. You whacked him."
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
So we run up, and I handed the camera to him, and I said, just point it in the direction of the animal and do the best you can. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he did an excellent job, man. He was rock solid.
That's
so
awesome.
we go up to it, and as soon as I turn the horns up, to look at him, he's got a friggin' unicorn point right between his eyes.
That's awesome.
And
dude.
so I'm like, hey, he's got a unicorn point. And he's like, what? Oh my God, that's rare,
Nice.
So I'm like, in fitting John fashion, I have this knack for first pronghorn, Boone and Crockett, first bear, the 5th largest bear in Canada.
Right.
My first kudu, he's got a unicorn point. Like,
right.
I don't know.
What? So I know nothing. I know nothing about critters in Africa. So give me a sense of like a kudu, like the size, like scale of it in comparison to something we might hunt in North America.
600 pounds.
Okay.
About 6 foot at the shoulders in height.
Okay.
So I refer to them as kind of like an elk.
Right. That's what I was gonna say. It'd be like
it's kind of
like a cow elk.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. So just like a skinny, juvenile elk in size. Yeah, I mean, the spiral horns ended up being 54 inches each. Ooh. And like 12 and an eighth bases.
Holy smokes!
So he's big. Yeah. He's big.
So where's that going in the house?
I don't know yet. I have no idea because I don't even have the moose up yet. So
dude, you're gonna have to buy a new house.
I know it's getting bad. Well, and I'm starting to get a little heat from Mama because at first she was like, whatever, he's going to put a few dead animals up. And I mean, now we're, just in the family room alone, I think there's like 18 whitetails and a couple of pronghorn and full mount bear, and there's 5 turkeys in there. So there's actually my Saskatchewan buck is laying on the floor in my office. I haven't even had a chance to hang him up yet. So
it's like Dr. freaking Doolittle over there.
Yeah, it's starting to stack up. And I mean, and there's God, I mean, there's two Impalas, a kudu, my Colorado muley. Those are all still at the taxidermist. So, and
Yeah.
the moose, yeah, they're starting on the moose in a couple weeks. But yeah, I don't know, man. The
Yeah.
champagne problems. I'll figure it out once I
Yeah,
get them
yeah,
all here.
exactly. There's worse problems to
Yeah,
have, right? Right. I'm feeling like
yeah,
there's a
yeah,
I'm feeling like there's an addition in your future to the house.
yeah. There's gonna be something. There's gonna have to be yeah. There's gonna have to be something. And she's been starting to push on me right now, and I mean, she's right. Like, I would love to have an offsite office,
Mm,
something that's just for Primal Divide and Johnny Utah Creative and Bourbon Barrel,
mm.
and have all three businesses. And so I've been looking at some real estate, and then I remember I'm poor, so
Yeah,
that kind of sucks.
yeah. Remembering that sucks. I had that
Yeah.
reminder. Yes, I had that reminder the other day. I was actually online, and I was actually thinking of you because I'm hoping I can come out to Iowa next year. Fingers crossed that I can draw. And so I
Mhm,
was
mhm.
already starting to think to like,
Yeah.
all right, cool. I want to come out and shed hunt again. Make a trip out, see John, do some shed hunting, stay for a couple of days. Hang out, and then get ready to come out in the fall. And then my mind starts wandering, and I start looking around online at farms in Iowa. And I'm like, oh, this one ain't bad. It's like 93 acres. It's a good farm. Maybe I could partially move to Iowa or something. Maybe I could get the wife to be cool with that. And then I remembered, like you remembered. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
poor. I'm poor. So
Yeah.
that dream left real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's It sucks, man. Yeah, because like I said, I was looking at some commercial properties the other day, and I'm like, man, this would be perfect. It's in between my house and the gym, and this would work out really good. And then I start crunching the numbers, and I'm like, no, I'm poor. That's probably not going to work. So I got to figure something out though,
Yeah.
because it would be nice. It would be nice to have an outside facility, especially I'm getting really close to maybe hiring a full time camera guy.
Mhm.
And, I don't want to have somebody like hanging out on the couch in the family room, or, because my office is a room in the house, but, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, if the dude needs to take a deuce, I don't want him deucing in my bathroom. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Right.
it's
Yeah.
just little things like that, and it's just kind of unprofessional, like, to be inside the house like that. But, you do it because it saves money, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm keeping overhead, I'm keeping costs down, and I don't know now's the time to try to spend a bunch of money. Interest rates are stupid.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen with the economy? I mean, some of my marketing partners that I work with, even though I feel like I kicked ass for them this year, they might start cutting some budgets. And usually marketing is one of the first things to get cut. So it's just that there's a lot of unknowns. So I'm like, well, maybe I need to wait and see. I need to get through contract season, which is coming up in another month or 2 months. Once I get through contract season and I know what's locked in for 23, then maybe I'll pull the trigger on something. But
Right.
until then, we'll just kind of ride it out.
Yeah. There you go. Maybe we go in halvesies. Maybe we get a little place that way I got a little spot to squat.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And that was another thing I looked at too, was maybe just try to pick up a couple of acres somewhere. And when I
Hmm.
say a couple, I mean under 10. And then just build a pole barn or something out there on it,
Right.
and do that.
Yeah.
Finish out a pole barn, and then kind of have a little spot.
Yeah. That'd be great
For
because
that.
that would
So
work great for
that's
even
an
like,
option.
yeah, that would even work great for photos to stage things. You know what I mean? Like as a backdrop,
Exactly.
like with a pole barn, it'd be a nice place to like, if you had some equipment or something like that, tractor or whatever, eventually, on a piece of property or something like that, that you would have a place to store that kind of stuff. Maybe build a race car,
Yeah.
do that again.
Yeah. You never know. You never know. God, man, I'd love to get back into that. Well, and that's kind of one of the guys that I've been talking to about potentially hiring on full time. As I said, look, if I had somebody full time, it opens up a lot of avenues. And if I had this remote location, this might be where I go get like an old 50s International pickup truck and park it out there for like, high school senior photos, or I might do some have props and
Mm-hmm.
different scenery to do engagement photos. And he's like, "Oh man, like, you want to get into that kind of stuff?" And I'm like, "No, but you got to pay for yourself somehow. So like, I'll book them and you go do them. But
Right.
so it would open up some opportunities,
Yeah.
to do some other things to help justify the cost of having a full-time guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, well,
So, but
I want to,
anyways, yeah. So I get back from
no, I was going to say, I want to move to the Wyoming thing. Cause I know you got like you were in some significant bear country out there, dude. And I had a little taste of it in
yeah,
Idaho. And that was, it's a little unnerving to say the least.
yeah, yeah. No, and the area that I went to, so I drew a rifle tag, mule deer rifle tag for Wyoming, and didn't know a whole lot about the area, but I knew that I had a buddy of mine that lived there, and he was local and have some local intel. It's where he's hunted for the last several years, so I was going to kind of feed off of him a little bit. And then there's those two wrestler kids that get mauled, and they get mauled like 5 miles from 10, maybe 10 miles from where we're going to be. And I'm like, wow, okay, that shit kind of got real. Um, so
Yeah.
I asked my buddy, Justin, I said, hey man, the grizzly's pretty thick out there. And he kind of laughs and he's like, you being serious? I'm like, yeah, man. I was like, I'm just asking. I was like, I'm not pussing out or nothing. I was like, but I'm just kind of curious. Like, are the grizzlies pretty thick? And he's like, bro, you're coming to the number one county in the United States for grizzly bears. In the whole lower 48, this is the Mecca. I'm like, oh, oh, okay, cool. I'm like, all right, well, he's like, yeah, dude, you're hunting in an area that it is required you must have bear spray. I was like, oh,
Okay.
all right, it's not an option.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right. So I mean, I'm ready to go, like pistol and bear spray, on me at all times. But we went into an area the first day, and I saw some grizzly shit, and I saw a few grizzly tracks. Nothing real fresh, and even the grizzly shit was like, yeah, it was probably 2-3 days old. So I'm like, okay, but it's a little hairy because where we were hiking in was a lot of pines. So like if you were going to see a grizzly, it was going to be inside of 10 yards
Yeah.
at the first set of eyeballs you see, which means you're a dead man. So there's this little gap for like the first half mile of the hike in, and we get through that and he's like, "Oh, I'm glad we're through that." He's like, "That section kind of scares me a little bit." I'm like, "Man, I'm glad you kept that shit to yourself when it's dark outside." I'm like, "Shit."
Yeah.
Like,
Dude, no.
dude, you like he's like, "Would you have rather known?" I'm like, I guess not. I was like, ignorance is bliss sometimes, right?
Dude, that's exactly it, man. That's why I was saying whatever came into camp that night, like I didn't want to know. Like I'm like
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. I was like, man, all those twigs that I heard breaking, like I probably would have like give myself whiplash, like looking behind me. But I
Exactly.
purposely was sandwiched. I had my buddy Justin, he was in the front, and the camera guy was in the back. And I was like, I'm using the old noggin. I'm strategically sandwiched between these guys. You know what I mean?
Right. Hopefully he's full by the time he gets to me.
Exactly. I'm like, but yeah, my buddy Justin he was good. I've been bluff charged by black bears, and that's unnerving. But I've never had any grizzly encounters. So, he was a good host, and he reminded us both, myself and Cody, just said, hey, if we see one, don't run. Please, for the love of God, don't run. If we're stacked up, in a line, just everybody slowly come up and go shoulder to shoulder and kind of make a wall just to show exactly there's a lot of people. We're a bigger object. because if he sees us all center stacked, he might just think it's one person. But he's like, no fast movements, don't yell. And he looks at Cody. I don't know why. I think he thought Cody was going to be the one to retreat, and he's like, seriously, bro. Well, I don't want to see your ass and elbows and feet running down the mountain, and it's just me and John standing here, got to fight this grizzly. So, I'm thinking, man, I don't know why he called out Cody. Shit, it might be me. You know what I mean?
I ain't gonna be the fastest. I just gotta be faster than one of you.
Exactly. I'm like, shit, So, anyways, no, so the first day, like I said, we didn't see anything. We saw a couple of does, and Justin was like, man, it's hot. Like this time last year, we already had a couple of snows, and it had already started. The migration had already started, and it was like a parade. Every day we were seeing a couple of different bucks, and I'm like, hey, it's day one, no big deal. So day two, we go up and we take a different route. We go up to the top of this ridge where we can glass and have a little bit better, view. And it's like, hey, I got a buck. And we had sat in a position to where what was comfortable. I found a rock that I could see. He found a rock that he could lean against, and it meant we were kind of like cross swords. Mm-hmm. I was glassing to the right and he was glassing to the left, even though he was sitting on my right. And so I was like, man, I got nothing. I've picked apart everything twice. And he's like, I'm covering this area a second time. And he's like, oh man, one just stood up. He's like, I've got one. So we're looking. I'm like, what is it? And he's like, man, I wish he was a little bigger, but it's a 3x4. He's not horrible. He's not trophy. But, what do you think? And I was like, all right, let's look at how we're going to get there. So the easiest way to explain it is Ridge 1, 2, and 3. We're at the peak of Ridge 1, and he is on the front face of Ridge 3. So we formulate a plan that if we drop down into the creek and come up the backside of Ridge 2, and we might have a line of sight and have an angle. Because right now where we're at, we're somewhere between 800 and 1,000 yards, away. So I'm like, man, it's a lot of work to go for an average, muley. Right. And he's like, well, we haven't seen shit. You know what I mean? And I don't think we're going to see anything because we're not going to have any temperature change, for several more days. So we might need to at least make a play on this one. Hey, we might get there and he might be gone anyways, but I think we got to try. And I'm like, okay, let's give it a shot. So we drop down the creek, back up the ridge. We're all pretty gassed, at this point. And we get up to the top, and I'm like, oh shit, we can do this, from this ridge, we can shoot this thing. And so I've got, like I said, I've got this custom built 300 PRC. Actually, shout out to Patrick, the owner of 717 Armory in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, former scout sniper. He built the rifle for me, and it is a work of art. It's got all top of the line stuff on it. It's better than I'll ever be, behind a rifle. And so we get into position. Now, I know that I'm going to be shooting from the prone position, so I strip my bino harness. And because no one wants to lay on a bino harness, prone. Right. So I strip it, but that's where my rangefinder is. So I get into position, and I was like, shit, I don't have a rangefinder. I'm like, Justin, what's the range? And he's like, and then real fast, he's like, you better hurry. Again, he's getting ready to boogie. And I'm like, shit. So there's like Panic at the Disco moment. And I'm like, 315, you said? So I pull out my Kestrel. And if anybody doesn't know what a Kestrel is kind of like a TI-85 with a little bit of NASA mixed in with it. You pre-program it with your barrel length, the distance from the middle of your scope to the middle of the barrel. You program the grain of your bullet, the feet per second, muzzle velocity. And you also program your latitude, the wind, the temperature. And the only thing you got to fucking do is enter the yardage. That's it. and it tells you exactly where to turn your turret. And of course, you program in what your turret is, if you're TMOA or what you have, if you're mil spec or whatever. So it's got everything in there for my gun. And before I left the trip, I was 1 inch groups at 500 yards, and so I have everything entered in there, and I type in 315. So I turn to it, which it tells me 3.4 on my turret. I go to 3.4, and I'm like, all right, boys, as soon as he turns broadside, fire in the hole. And everybody's like, ha, ha, and now it's like, all right, this is real. This is what we hiked all the way up the side of this mountain forest for this moment of truth. I pull the trigger, and he does a backflip. And I'm like, done. Got him.
Slam dunk.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. He stands back up and walks away.
What?
And I was like, what? So I'm like, something's not right. Like this, there's no way I should miss. You know what I mean? This gun and this Kestrel, everything's perfect. Like what happened? And I know that I wasn't questioning the shot because the shot, the rifle was on the bipod, and at that angle, it was actually the butt of the rifle was sitting on the ground. So I wasn't even having to support it at all.
Right.
I mean, everything was rock solid. And I'm like, something's not right. Something's not right. So I scramble, I go back and I grab my rangefinder and I range it and I get 375.
Jeez.
And I'm like, 315, 375, And I'm like, oh my gosh. Now we had a ton of sun that was coming in, and I don't know if that gave Justin a wrong number.
Or if he was just excited and read it wrong off of his,
or did he catch a branch of a tree,
right?
In between us and the muley, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Now, we did go and look for the muley. Justin, actually, he did himself. He bombed down the drainage and back up, and just to verify, no blood, no dead muley,
right.
And it was just a clean mess. So I get back into service that night, and I'm hiking. I hiked angry off the mountain, mind you. Shout out to John Barklow. I hiked angry as shit off that mountain. I was pissed.
Yeah.
I'm not a poor loser, but I hate to lose.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really hate to lose. And I'm just pissed. And that was an avoidable situation, Yeah. So we get down and we get back into phone service. Well, I have to back up. So we're hiking down the mountain. We had just come up that trail like 3 hours prior. We laid down 6 boot tracks, between me, Justin, and the cameraman. And none of our boot tracks are visible. It's all Grizzly tracks now.
Oh, geez.
And there's like 4 more fresh piles of Grizzly shit. And the cherry on top is a fresh mule deer doe skull, still bloody.
Fun.
Right on the game trail. And so me, with my career background, been around enough crime scenes, I take my finger and I wipe the blood off the skull. And I was like, ooh, yeah, like it's time to haul ass, because that's like 30, 45 minutes fresh. It's really time to haul ass. So we get the hell off the mountain and we get back down to the base, get to the truck, and we get to service. And I'm texting the guy, Patrick, who built the rifle. And I'm like, I feel like a dick. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my God, I'm freaking. And anyways, he's like, yeah, that's about a 10 to 12 inch drop, is what that difference is at that distance, at that, on that gun. So he's like, yeah, I mean, that totally explains why you shot right underneath him. And he's like, how was left and right? I'm like, left and right was friggin' money,
Right.
But, so anyways, that was it, man. And then we had, we checked some other areas that were a less berry, so to speak. And then the last night I was there, we knew a big front was coming in, We had like 40, 50 mile an hour winds that came in the last night. And then the next day was bringing in a day of solid downpour, like hurricane style rain. And then the day after that, they were getting like 8 to 9 inches on the mountain. So I'm like,
Damn.
the options are stay here in a hotel, hunker down for 4 or 5 days, let this bad storm pass, and then we can get back after it. And I'm like, man, it's time to call it. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
time to go. So that was Wyoming. So I mean, I learned a little. Um, I mean, I learned a lot. Justin taught me a ton about what to look for, areas that they like to be in, all that kind of stuff. And the terrain is very different between Colorado and Wyoming. And but I learned a shit ton from him, and I forever thank him for that. It was also reiteration and a reminder to everybody else when you're ranging shit at long distance, don't take the first number. Like
Yeah.
purposely make yourself range, re-range, re-range, re-range. And if you're getting a variance in your numbers, keep doing it until you get you get
Yeah.
consistency on your numbers.
Yeah. I range like a fiend all the time. Like when I'm hunting, it's just I have ADHD with ranging. It's like I have to constantly do it. Like I'll be like, oh, do I remember that tree? I think it's 26. Let me check. It's like I'm constantly kind of checking it because I'm
Yeah.
always worried that I'm like animal's going to come in and I'm going to forget because I have a bad memory to begin with. I'm going to forget what the number is. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that's cool, man, that you've had a chance to do muley hunts in two different states and two different very kind of different terrain. Because
Yeah.
it's always anytime you can hunt like that, you know, either different species or the same species in different places. It creates a mental Rolodex of um, almost like artificial intelligence where you start to see things like I don't want to see through the
Hmm.
muley's eyes, but you start to see like similarities between what they look for. No matter where you're at, there's similar things that are going to kind of be consistent at each spot.
Yeah. And the Colorado style, I mean, I definitely learned a lot, but I think a lot of the reason why I had success was because it was very similar to
Hmm.
pronghorn. Um, mountain muleys, I mean, in reality, it's you got to find them.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can get lucky and you might glass one up at 100, 200 yards away or something like that. I've said it before, I'm not that lucky. So using the loophole spotter. I don't work with this company at all. I paid full retail for it, but a product called MagView.
Mhm.
I purchased their product and had that mounted on my scope with the magnet on my phone. And because when you spend that much time glassing with one eye, man, it really I get headaches. It starts to strain a little bit. So by having your phone on there and put it in video mode, even though you're not filming anything, but put it in video mode, you can actually kind of sit back away from your spotter and you got a big screen and you can use both of your eyes
Yeah.
equally. So you're not straining because that's the other part. If you're straining one eye through the spotter and then it's like, oh shit, it's time to shoot, you might be a little funky.
I always get watery
So that
watery
was nice.
eyes. I always get watery eyes from that for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Like, and then
Yeah.
like my vision gets not my vision gets blurry, but it'll feel like it's constantly wanting to water, which then in return makes my vision slightly blurry, but at least out of that eye. So I've actually looked at that viewfinder before. I think because didn't it come out recently? Wasn't it like this summer or maybe last summer when they launched it?
Yeah, because I bought it at one of the tax shoots. I never
Okay,
even heard of them until I came across them in July at the Park City Tax. They were there.
nice. So then you're now
But
back in
yeah, those are cool.
right, yeah. So you're now back in Iowa, and I think we've been rolling for about an hour. I think what we'll do is we'll keep this one to like the Western and Africa stuff because I have a feeling you're going to have a larger story to tell for your for whitetails here in the next couple weeks since we're just getting into the getting good, if you know what I'm saying.
Uh, I you kind of lost me there for a second. The I'm back in Iowa and what now? Sorry.
Oh yeah, I was just saying that you're back in Iowa now, but I think what we'll do is we'll have a part two of this that will focus on whitetails because I think your story's yet to be written for the whitetails.
Yes, yes, very much so. And man, I hope it's a good one because it's starting off slow as shit right now.
Dude, well, I
You
mean,
know,
just
I lost
I
well,
was
and I lost my good lease, and I'm back to my crappy lease that I've had for a while, and you know, it it just doesn't hold a lot of stuff, and I'm catching I that property has always been I'm trying to make it better and trying to make it better, and it's gotten a little better, but it's still a cut through,
mhm, yeah,
piece. It's always been that way.
yeah. The do you have I mean, it's funny, man, because what you're kind of mentioning with just like the, not having or it being kind of slow or whatever. Like I've heard that
Hmm.
from a ton of dudes, just in general, like in a bunch of different states. Like I know buddies of mine in Ohio right now. A handful of them they're having some really bad EHD issues where it's like they can't find a good
Oh
buck
yeah.
like to save their life. Just like they're finding more dead deer than they're finding just deer in general.
I've seen a lot of the EHD stuff come out of Ohio, but for the most part in the Midwest, it's just been friggin' warm.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's kind of crazy. I mean, just 3 days ago here it was 87 degrees.
Ooh, yeah, that's a heater, man. I because I've been watching the weather out there just because I'm getting ready to leave for Kansas. Well, you and I are going to be there, not probably too far
Hmm.
apart from one another, and I've been just kind of watching. It
Yep.
looks like it's at least going to start to cool down a little bit. I can't see out to exactly when I'm going to get there because I'll be there probably the second week in November. I think I'll get there like the 5th officially and start hunting the 5th. I might get there the 4th, but I won't start hunting until Saturday. Um,
Yep.
so I'm hoping that we're trending in the right direction for weather because I don't really want to hunt the plains with no shade at 85 degrees.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the spot that I'm going to go to is different from where I was just at. I was hunting with a buddy of mine, Nate, and I linked up with an outfitter that's in the same unit, that my tag's good for. He's a brand new outfitter, and it was kind of one of those deals like, hey man, um, it's my second year in business. I've got great properties. We've got a lot of good deer on camera. Um, but we sunk a lot of money into these properties and we don't have a lot left over for marketing. Is there anything that we can do together? Any way
Right.
we can kind of work together? And so I'm going to go there and try to help him out.
Mhm.
He's gonna kind of waive the trespass fee, so to speak, and kind of let me go in there and do my thing and give a little promotion to him so he could definitely use it. And seems like a really nice guy, and he's trying to do the right thing. With Kansas being a draw state, unfortunately for him, he had a lot of hunters that did not draw this year. So he's like, oh shit, he was banking on making money,
Yeah.
and so he's kind of like, man, if there's anything we can do to help each other out, let's do it. So I'm gonna head back there, and it's also one of those deals too. Like with my buddy, he's got a bunch of properties, and I always feel guilty going and shooting one of his bucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So and he's always been such a good host, and he has a couple of buddies that come and hunt with him every year, and I'm like, hey, if I don't come there, that's just one less, that's one extra buck running around. You know what I mean? So
Right.
that's what I'm going to go do. And, but yeah, so I've kind of left it with him like, hey, when you start seeing daylight cameras start lighting up, holler at me and
Right.
I'll slide over there from Iowa. But yeah, I'm going to kind of buckle down here for a little while before, I've got about another month before I head to back to Saskatchewan. So,
Yep. Nice. Well, we'll make a plan that hopefully we're gonna call our shot. We're gonna get back on the podcast and we're gonna talk about an Iowa buck laid down and 2 Kansas bucks laid down and a Pennsylvania buck. Damn it,
yep.
I'm gonna kill one of these
And
mountain
a
bucks.
Pennsylvania buck.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, and when I go to Saskatchewan, the tentative plan is actually to chase muleys there too.
Damn, dude, you're
So
like
it's
all you're
kind of been a
yeah
yeah.
all up in
Well,
those muleys.
yeah, I didn't draw any elk tags this year. I was kind of bummed about that. So I did a hard transition real fast. And I said, maybe we'll just make this a mule deer year, and immerse myself in muleys and see how much I can learn in one season, about muleys. And I can't think of any different scenarios. Like you got plains, open spot and stock with a bow, mountain, Wyoming, rifle, and then Saskatchewan, deep timber, frigid snow muleys. I'm like, man, that covers all the bases right there.
Yeah, man. Like you gotta. That's like one of those ice creams where it's that soda fountain drink you make as a kid at the graveyard where you just put all the shit in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
well,
cool,
I'm just
man.
trying to learn as much as I can about muleys, and then next year, kind of flip that script back to elk and
right,
get back on that. So we'll see.
Nice. Well, brother, we've been powering through for a little over an hour.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you go. Be sensitive to your time. Let people know where they can find out more about Primal Divide, Johnny Utah Creative, where they can find all your stuff.
Yeah. So Primal Divide, my show, I switched over to the Waypoint TV network, and they've done something really cool with all of the app programs that are out there. And you can still watch the show via their app, but they have also they've kind of got their big boy pants on, and they became an actual native channel on a lot of the streaming services. So if you already have Pluto or Sling or Samsung TV, and there's a couple more, Vizio, there's a couple of more that are out there, but there's an actual Waypoint channel. So you can watch Primal Divide 4 times a week on that network, or you can simply just go to the app and you can watch it. And then Johnny Utah Hunt on Instagram is, my personal Instagram that I use the most. And that's going to be more of your day-to-day updates with what I'm doing and jackassery and whatnot.
Whatever tomfoolery you've got going on.
Tomfoolery. Yeah.
Tomfoolery.
And I try not to be political on my personal Instagram, but every once in a while,
it's gotta happen. Tomfoolery. That's a phrase you don't hear often enough anymore.
No. Tom, you're up to a bunch of tomfoolery.
With that, man, we're gonna go ahead and get out of here before it gets weird. All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Spartan Forge, Exodus, and Skull Brew Coffee Company. And until next time, we'll see y'all.